What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. Alright, so today I want to go over the function of a main controller versus an off controller, or MC and OC. So right now I'm in an MC configuration. Now, I've been gone for years, so I have a lot, and I mean a lot, to work on. But my main right now isn't my controller. I'm working on my healer for my main. But this was my main at one time. But not everything is leveled, but we're going to go ahead and get to the functionality of the controller. Very important, as an MC, we want to take everything that's set for controller role, because it's going to give us the most vitalization and dominance. Dominance is a contributing factor to the CC capability, right? So dominance is combined with restoration to increase the potency of heals and shields. Dominance must be higher than enemies' willpower for crowd control. So a controller is exactly that. They control the ads. So that's what's important for the controller, to have a high dom. Okay. Now, you want to also make sure you have high in vitalization, because what vitalization does is determine the potency of your power heals. This does not affect your passive power regeneration or power regeneration from weapon attacks. Okay, so that's why we clip weapon attacks, to help with, power regeneration. Alright, so there's the multiplier right down here. That is, you calculate towards your regeneration capabilities. Now, that's why it's important for an MC to have everything in controller setup. Now, in Trinket, we use the vitalization stack, and you can use a DOM. You can. DOM would give you a lot more than vitalization, but mainly it's always the stack of the vitalization for output. Now, in our artifact slot, I'm a hard light, but this is what I would recommend for majority of main MCs. Some debuffs could apply, so this configuration might not work out best for every MC, but for a primary MC, I think this is the better setup. The Amulet of Rael, because you're going to be debuffing. So once this is fully leveled, we're going to get a 50% stronger effects, and it's going to apply stronger debuffs towards all of the targets. The other one is the parasite power. This is really important as well. Once again, I have to level all of this up, because this is going to give us and 7 group members power equal to a percentage of our vitalization, and precision equal to of our vitalization. So it's going to apply more higher damage to the precision, which is the weapon attacks. Very, very important here. The last but not least is the Omegagadron. I think I pronounced that right. Using a superpower in combat while between 25 and 75%, power increases your base power regen, because as a controller, you can bottom out when you're feeding. Now, the off controller feeds the MT, or the MC, not MT, MC. So when they're working in tangent together, power levels are constantly up high, but the last thing you want is to bottom out, and that's a lot of problems with controllers. This helps sustain your power output. Okay, so very, very, very important. Why you never want to bottom out as a controller, because when you do, then you're struggling to push out more power in the debuffs. Debuffs are always important, especially on primary boss. Now, when it comes to the loadout, we always want to take the passives into our major movement. So we always take the reductions for the innate passives. We always want to take the weapon combos. But when it comes to stat allocation, our main focus as an MC is the hybrid, because this is going to give us our extra Dom and our vitalization buffs. So, and then of course we're going to go with the critical power chance and the critical power magnitude, and then we split the difference between vitalization and the dominance. Now, I always focus a little bit more on vitalization output for power, but Dom's just as important. So you want to try to get to a point where you're up on vitalization and then you're redistributing into the Dom. Now remember, bosses are immune to control effects, but they still take the debuffs. So as a main controller, your primary job is always to debuff. That is your primary job. Okay, now the off controller, I want to say it's this button. Okay, yeah, this is my OC build out. Is going to be slightly different when it comes to stat adjustment, because the off controller is still going to be in what we call controller loadout. So you'll see I have an icon. If I hit T, that's a damage, but I want to be in the controller loadout. Why? Because it adjusts the stats. Okay, so I'm going to be in a controller. I'm still going to be in controller loadout to push out more, but I'm still dealing more damage than an MC. Why? Because I'm using primary damage abilities into the loadout. Now I'll go back over to the loadout and show you guys the debuffs. But for example, I'm not throwing a lot of debuffs. I want to go ahead and apply the effect. Dazed enemies, dazes enemies, making them vulnerable to dazed attacks. I want my spammable. I want extra effects that I can combo up constructs. And then my main job as an OC is recharge. Recharge your team and instantly revitalize your group's 3 most fatigued members, restoring power. Now that's always going to be the MC, typically, and your healer. Those are the 2 that are always going to need more power. So you want to have that. If you run a super, you're always going to have a damage, or you're, depending on the build, you can also run the precision buff or another damaging effect. So that's what you're still dealing damage. Now, into the stat pool, the same thing applies with the the passives, but stats are going to be adjusted. We're going to take superpowered, unless you're a controller that's going to deal weapon damage, and you're still going to take this, but you're going to take the precision buff versus the might. Why are you going to take this one? The plus 25% power regeneration is why. It's going to give you more plus towards your regening capability to feed. Okay, you still want to take the critical power output because you're feeding, so you want those power outputs to crit. So you want the crit chance and you want the magnitude. The difference, though, we're going to put also into the damaging modifiers, and then we're going to redirect into the damaging superpowers, increasing our base stat of our damaging effects. So that's the difference between the MC and the OC. Okay, the OC deals more damage than the MC. So very, 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 very important. You still have 2 trollers, just one pushes out more damage and feeds. That's what we call a feeder. The other one debuffs. So when I come back in and I come back to my primary and we go to loadout, you'll see I have the recharge. I have the debuff, reduces the target's output of damage, reduces the target's defenses, so they take more damage. And then some bosses do have self-healing effects, so you want to have a debuff, not all, but some. And then I always go with the shield. Why? Because I don't want to die. And then, of course, the MC is always going to use a supercharge that feeds power to themselves and their party. Now, the biggest difference of it is on the... Hold on 1 second. That's my DPS. Okay. On the OC, what you're going to do is you're going to take the Tetradron of Urgrad, because hitting an enemy with a superpower grants you and 7 other members a might boost. That increases all of your guys' damage. We still want to go ahead and we're going to use the Entwined Rings of Azar, because using a group power heal grants you and up to 7 group members health equal to your vitalization. Okay, so there's going to be a health boost associated. Now, mind you, your vitalization isn't as strong as the MC, but you're still giving a health boost. Okay, so you're buffing with multiple effects. And then last but not least, you're going to have one controller ability, because the Claws of Akaland, I don't know where to get this. While in control role, notice that I'm in control role, your group weapon buff applies to you and your party members. So that gives them an additional 7% might. Okay? So you're buffing your party with all of your effects. With the O, and still dealing damage. So very important for the O versus the M, versus the off and the main. I wanted to go over this today. Because I just think it's kind of important that people realize when we talk about a main tank versus the off tank versus the main heals versus off heals and main controller and off controller, that there's only usually 2 main DPS, but the off roles have basically a hybrid build where their functionality is still applied to the group, but not diminishing their damage output like a main does, because main healers don't deal a tremendous amount of damage, main tanks don't deal a tremendous amount of damage, and controllers don't deal a tremendous amount of damage. If they're in an off role, they have the stat adjustments in the abilities in the artifacts to go ahead and do such. Now, also very important in the augmentation, the off controller uses the might versus the the Dom ones. An MC is going to have all Dom. Why? For control effects. Where you're only going to have 1 in this role. You don't need 1 per se, but for me, I do it because of the vitalization, right? So I'm getting a little bit more out of that. Hello? But... Yo, what's up? I'm going to finish this stream up. I'm almost done, Hobby. Say hi to everybody.
What up, everyone?
So, this is the point, and then also we're going to take the 1 into the controller for our adaptive augment, and that's how you want to roll as the OC versus the MC. So, with that being said, I want to thank you guys. If you have any questions or comments, post below. As always, I'm Mystic Raven. This is Mystics MMOs. Peace.